The NHL is determined to salvage the season. I've seen numerous articles, interviews with hockey players, and they're saying, "Yep, the NHL is doing its best to salvage the season." And Bettman's really determined. Now, think about this from Gary Bettman's perspective. Bettman, who is very popular with the owners, I know he's not popular with fans. I know he may not be popular with some players either, past and present. Probably more from the past that don't like him than the present. But if Gary Bettman can figure out a way to make hockey happen right now, if he can figure that out, owners are going to be very happy with him because everybody's losing money right now. Every day they're at home, everybody's losing money. So it would appear that there's a timeline that's out there that's started to leak out, and enough information's out there that I've put it together on the board because it all seems to add up to something. So the idea is May 15th, players start skating again. Now, I've seen a lot of people saying, hey, if borders are closed, nobody's going anywhere. Borders are closed, but people are still like, we've got the Canada-US border here. You're still able to cross the border for work. You're still able to cross the border if you have, if you're an essential service in the US and you live in Canada, you can cross the border. If you have work, you can still cross the border. So players are still going to be able to make that movement take place between countries. And again, you've got, it's private business, billions of dollars. You've got a president of the United States who said he wants sports back. So there's ways to make it happen. Basically, the idea that European players could very well be allowed to come over and play. That is absolutely 100% possible, and even I would go as far as to say feasible that could happen. And it's going to be expensive for the NHL to make that work. Absolutely agreed. So May 15th could just be opening up some practice rinks where it's safe, where players are able. We've seen players returning from injury are able to go out and skate at rinks. And so May 15th is when we could see guys doing informal skates and workouts, and that's necessary. If the NHL is even going to think about reopening this summer, that has to happen. So then June 1st, it sounds like could be training camp. And again, I'm putting up where all these numbers, where they're coming from. And there are others that have been speculating. The Score is saying they've heard from at least, that at least one team is telling players training camp starts June 1st. That's what they're aiming for, is June 1st for training camp. And then July is when we would see actual games start being played. So this is what the NHL hopes. And again, this was reported on the Score. These numbers all add up. Now, if the NHL is actually going to come back and play, absolutely, you have to get the players on the ice. They have to have weeks of skating and weeks of prep. And so the May 15th date that John Scotts had told to him, that makes some sense. And I think a lot of this is informal. That's why you're not going to see actual dates other than when we're probably going to see a deadline for return. And here's the thing. If you want to see the NHL come out and say, we can't save this, around May 15th is probably the deadline. That's where the NHL probably has to say, okay, we can't save this. Now, there's a lot of talk right now about some cities reopening and some businesses reopening and the wisdom or non-wisdom of doing all of this. I'm not getting into that in this video. I'm just going to say, if the NHL wants to reopen, there are places that they will find the ability to do that. Now, hub cities have been rumored, and hub cities that are out there, Edmonton has been rumored. The numbers in Alberta being alarming, but in Edmonton they're not anywhere near where they are in other parts of the province. Winnipeg has been talked about. Manitoba's doing really well. Vancouver's not on the list, but honestly, BC's done pretty well over the last month as well. Dallas, Nashville, St. Louis, Vegas, Tampa Bay. Now, Vegas, the problem with Vegas, for me, as much as, yes, Vegas would be perfect, the city of Las Vegas is most likely to play host to the NBA if the NBA comes back. And there's already talk about the NBA trying to come back this summer. And I know NASCAR has a race that they're going ahead with in May. They've announced their return date. And there are other sports that are making their returns next month. And again, it's about safety. There aren't going to be fans in attendance. The reason these are hub cities is there's not going to be fans in attendance. And these are just examples. And as this is just, they're speculating. Apparently there's 12 different cities the NHL's talked to about being hub cities and coming up with some sort of a setup where you can keep things as safe as possible for the players. And then Bill Daly said something interesting as well, which was that a positive test or positive tests don't necessarily shut down the whole league. So this is something that's been said. As soon as there's a positive test, you have to shut everything down. Not necessarily. And here's why. And this is where people are going to say, oh, that's not right. So at the time we shut down in March, a lot of it is we have great unknowns. We are concerned about, all the health and safety of the players. Now what's changed is, and what's changing, especially by July, is more widespread testing. So that, let's say you're out there and Joe Schmo tests positive. You can then test all of his teammates immediately. So Joe Schmo he's gone. He's gone for 14 days. All of his teammates get tested. They test negative out on the ice. And you treat it like an injury. And that's kind of what I speculated about a month ago the NHL would probably end up doing at some point, is treating it like it's an injury. They're out, and then once they have a negative test, they're back on the ice. It's not a perfect solution. There won't be one. And if we're going to see professional sports at all, this is kind of how it's going to have to work. And again, I keep seeing reports on how long. We don't know. We really don't. We just don't. There isn't any date that, okay, we're going to have this fixed by. And I heard some encouraging stuff yesterday, and I've heard some discouraging stuff as well, and it is what it is. So if the NHL is going to come back, they're going to have guys at least skating by the middle of May. So that gives them 6 weeks from when they start skating again until we have games that mean anything, at the very least. Keep in mind they've talked about August as well, if they just go straight into the playoffs. This is going to impact next season. When I see people saying, just pack up and just get ready for next season. No, this is going to impact next season. This is absolutely going to impact. It has to. We're seeing a situation where they want to have the draft in June, potentially before you've had the game return. Just imagine we have a training camp going on, and then, oh, by the way, we have the draft going on during training camp. Baffling, but it's we hope once in a lifetime kind of thing, right? And then it's going to impact next season. We're going to see a squashed off season. We're going to see things, and I keep mentioning when I do the previews, the arbitration. The arbitration is going to absolutely take time, and so it's going to be interesting. But the NHL already has a plan in place where the regular season starts in November for next year, and we don't have an all-star break, and we don't have the bye weeks, which already takes out like about 2 weeks worth of schedule right there. So it can be done. It's going to mean players are going to be working a lot harder next season than usual in terms of more regular season times where there's 15 games on and there's 4 games a week being played by teams. And this guy, as the hockey guy, is going to be watching as much of it as humanly possible. But there's a possibility this guy could be getting burnt out by the end of the season. But boy, the power rankings could move around a lot during the season, couldn't they? So this is likely going to be the Hail Mary for the NHL. Watch for the NBA to have their version as well. Watch for Major League Baseball to come out with some kind of a plan as well in the next couple of weeks. And I understand people saying, "Oh, just shut it down. Just shut it down." They need to shut it down. They don't have to. There's no harm being done by saying, "Oh, we'll try to salvage what we can." And a lot of players that were injured are no longer injured. So a lot of the problems teams might have had with injuries going into the playoffs, right now they don't have them. So I think it's going to be a lot of speculation. Like I said, I've put up on the board what's been coming out over the last few days. That's definitely garnered a lot of attention, whether that's attention on Twitter, whether that's attention somewhere else. And of course, there are former players chiming in to say yes, they should play games this summer, and there were former players chiming in to say no, they shouldn't. But in the end, it's going to come down to an agreement between the NHL and the NHLPA. I want you guys to remember, before anything happens, before we get games in July, the union has to agree. The NHLPA has to come out and say, we agree, this is exactly the right thing, and we're going to come back on this date. If the players don't agree, we don't get it. So if we end up with a July return, it's because both the players and the owners have said, this is what we're going to do. It's still in motion. It's still fluid. And if there's any changes, I'll be here to report it. But it does add up. The information that's coming out does add up. And we'll see. We'll see if we end up with something being played in July. And I keep seeing too. Well, it's hard to keep ice good in the summer. Gary Bettman already addressed that. I think that's part of the reason why they're not looking at neutral sites now. All of the NHL arenas, anywhere you look at them, they're all very good when it comes to their ability to keep their buildings cool and keeping the ice in pretty darn good condition. So there are a couple of exceptions where the ice gets kind of chippy and choppy during June, but in general, I think they'll be able to figure it out. It means increased refrigeration costs, but for the NHL right now, there's already a bunch of losses coming up. So we'll see how this goes. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.